moving across to Gaurav Sawant, who's in Sderot, the area that is being bombarded heavily. Gaurav, please take us through exactly what you see on ground. It is a volatile area.
The India Today team right now is at the front lines of this conflict. These are the powerful Markava tanks of the Israeli army, and these tanks have now been mobilized. We are right at the front lines. Watch around me as the howitzers, the tanks and the infantry combat vehicles of the Israeli army are all slowly getting mobilized, and all of it is happening right here with the flag of the Israeli army. These soldiers are now prepared. The mobilization has already taken place and the forces are now moving forward. Their deployment, their locations constantly being changed, and an element of surprise is maintained on the they are moving forward very, very quickly, very capable tanks and very Israeli army that are now being mobilized. Right now, what we see are this entire area has now been sanitized. There's only military movement that is permitted here. No civilian movement is permitted here. We are permitted to come here because we have a special pass. These are the front lines. This is the absolute front line of Israel military deployment and location. Behind me, these very powerful tanks, locked and loaded. Some of these tanks were initially deployed. At the front line where there was a breach in the fence. That breach in the fence was where the terrorists had infiltrated. These tanks were keeping an eye. They were keeping a hawk eye on any infiltration that was taking place to prevent it and to found. It's more than a regiment of a tank that moves behind us. Usually you see perhaps one foot could move, you see perhaps 10 tanks move. But in this case, we counted a large number of tanks, more than a regiment that has already moved and forward towards the front section. This was perhaps, we are not very far from this movement, so you can very clearly make out that these tanks are moving in big numbers to be able to dominate the area where they're deployed. Just a short while back, we also saw movement. We were reporting on the movement of infantry combat vehicles in this area. I want to show you how these tanks are moving Israel's chief justice and Israel's army chief had made that very clear yesterday. All along, they've been founding 750 sensitive locations. The Hamas strongholds of the Hamas have already been founded. The artillery and military has the only chance of supporting life as one of this conflict everywhere. Heavy artillery. The artillery guns were pulverizing specific locations from where Hamas was firing its rockets. Those locations have been pulverized, and now you have these tanks that are moving forward. This would indicate that should the deployment be ordered any time, and some indications are that you already have frontline troops down. Let me explain how the operation is usually carried out in such situations where you want to occupy a higher ground or you want to occupy a territory. First, the Air Force found the enemy to ensure that
the Hamas is no longer in a position to retaliate when ground troops go in. Air Force uses precision-guided munition. After the Air Force, you then have the artillery that continues to pound fortifications so that the adversary keeps their head down. And that is the time when the armor,
actually the first responders in this battle. When the armor moves in, the infantry combat vehicles, the armor, infantry combat vehicles provide protection to ground soldiers as they run. Look at this terrain. Because of this terrain, you will have tracked and not wheeled vehicles that are moving forward. So on track, you have soldiers in infantry combat vehicles and covered tanks moving forward. After infantry combat vehicle and armor, once they have ensured that they have their dominance and the adversary is down, that is the time when the ground soldiers will move in and occupy what is known as in military parlance, PA and vital assets and vital points. They will take those domineering positions all along. Gaza is a fortnight, it's not very far from here. And in Gaza, you have various locations that ये जो आप मेरे पीछे तस्वीरें देख रहे हैं, ये इजरायली सेना के मरकावा टैंक को और बहुत तेजी से इस समय यहाँ पर मूवमेंट शुरू हो गया है। अगर आप बिल्कुल मेरे पीछे देखें तो एक नहीं, दो नहीं, बड़ी संख्या में इजरायल की सेना के टैंक अब एक लोकेशन से दूसरे लोकेशन में आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। इनकी तैयारी पूरी है और आप पीछे देख भी सकते हैं। मैं लगातार टैंकों को दिखने की कोशिश कर रहा था और एक रेजिमेंट से कहीं ज़्यादा, यानी अगर 20 से 22 टैंक एक रेजिमेंट में होते हैं या 24 टैंक, तो उससे कहीं ज़्यादा टैंकों की आवाजाही, टैंकों का शुरू हो गया है। और ये आपको बता दें कि इजरायल की सेना ने मन बना लिया है। और पिछले कुछ दिनों में क्या हो रहा था, लगातार पहले लड़ाकू विमानों से हमास के ठिकानों को ध्वस्त किया जा रहा था। हमास के ठिकानों को जब विमानों से ध्वस्त कर दिया गया, विमानों से बमबारी करके उसके बाद 155 किलोमीटर दूर से भारी बमबारी की गई। कोशिश यही थी कि हमास के जहाँ जहाँ लड़ाके हैं, हमास के जहाँ जहाँ अड्डे हैं, उन्हें पूरी तरह से तहस नहस कर दिया जाए। और उसके बाद अब ये टैंकों का मूवमेंट शुरू हुआ है। इन तस्वीरों को जरा गौर से देखिए। ये तस्वीरें आपको दिखाती है कि किस तरह का इलाका है और यहाँ कैसे टैंक आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। ये पूरा रेगिस्तानी एक तरह से इलाका है। हालांकि इजरायल यहाँ अच्छी खेती-बाड़ी भी करता है, लेकिन उसके जो कि यहाँ टैंकों का अब शुरू हो गया है। और यहाँ से अब इजरायल की सेना के टैंक, इजरायल की सेना की कब्जे में जारी एक मरकावा टैंक से आप इसकी नार को देखिए और इसके ऊपर लगी मशीन गन को देखिए। ये टैंक अब धीरे धीरे आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। इसमें जो सैनिक ऊपर तैनात थे, वो इन टैंकों को आगे पर एक जगह से दूसरी जगह पर ले जा रहे हैं। जिस तरह से ये मूवमेंट हो रहा है, इससे आपको अंदाजा लगेगा कि कितनी बड़ी संख्या में इजरायल की सेना यहाँ पर तैनात की गई है। ये गाजा पट्टी से बहुत इलाका है। हमें जो जानकारी मिली है उसके मुताबिक IDF यानी इजरायली डिफेंस फोर्सेस ने पिछले 24 घंटे में 750 ऐसे संवेदनशील इलाके निकाले थे। 750 ऐसे वाइटल एक्सेस और वाइटल पॉइंट्स निकाले थे जहाँ पर हमास को और उन हमास के स्ट्रॉबोर्ड्स को पूरी तरह से ध्वस्त किया जा रहा है। जब हवा से और 155 मिलीमीटर तोपों के वार से उनको पूरी तरह से ध्वस्त कर दिया जाएगा, उसके बाद इजरायल की ग्राउंड फोर्सेस आगे बढ़ेगी। जो मरकावा टैंक है ठीक मेरे पीछे, और इनके साथ जो इन्फेंट्री कॉम्बैट व्हीकल्स है ये इनके पीछे पीछे रहेंगे। एक मकसद के साथ में 10 से 15 सिपाहियों को ये अपने एक दूसरे को गाड़ी में लेकर जाते हैं, लेकिन उस मकसद पर गाड़ी ऊपर से हमला न हो जाए, यानी किसी बिल्डिंग के ऊपर हमास के आतंकवादी पर निशाना न बना ले, इसीलिए इस पूरे आकाश के ऊपर कई जगह मानव रहित 2 ही विमान यानी अनमैन्ड एरियल व्हीकल है, और वो अनमैन्ड एरियल व्हीकल पूरे आकाश पर और पूरी धरती पर जो गाजा के ऊपर है उस पर चप्पे चप्पे पर नजर रखे हुए हैं। उसी से अंदाजा लगेगा कि किस तरह से वहां पर इजराइल की सेना का कोई रास्ता न रोके, उसके लिए क्या क्या तैयारी इस समय की गई है। पहली बात। दूसरी बात, मरकावा बहुत ही सक्षम टैंक्स है, ये पूरे एरिया को डोमिनेट करने के लिए इजराइल के पास इस तरह के टैंक्स है और वक्तन पर गाड़ियाँ। पहले हवा से ध्वस्त किया जा रहा है, फिर जमीन से ग्राउंड फोर्सेस, और उससे पहले इंडिया टुडे और आज तक पर अपने एक्सक्लूसिव को तस्वीर दिखाई थी किस तरह से ग्राउंड पर 155 मिलीमीटर तोपों ने पूरी तरह से हमास की ठिकानों को ध्वस्त कर दिया था। जमीन से, आकाश से और समुद्र से 3 तरफ से हमास पर यूं कहे चौतरफा हमला है, क्योंकि अब ग्राउंड फोर्सेस की एंट्री की पूरी तरह तैयारी में है। अमेरिका के विदेश मंत्री एंथनी ब्लिंकन यहाँ पर जब इजराइल में थे तो उन्होंने भी साफ तौर पर कहा कि न केवल एक पिता के रूप में, एक पति के रूप में, एक इंसान के रूप में, बल्कि एक यहूदी के रूप में भी उनके मन में वो दर्द है और वो दर्द समझ सकते हैं। हाउ इजराइल इज फीलिंग द पेन of the terror attack that was carried out by Hamas. It's been 1 week of the terror attack. Even as we speak, 1,200 plus people were massacred here. In fact, some of those areas where people were massacred is not very far from where I am standing right now. Kafar Azar is not far from where I am right now. Some of those kibbutz are barely a stone throw distance from where we are, and this is where Hamas terrorists and massacred people, 1,200 people, and this is how an army sees the tanks, and right behind the tanks you see the tracked infantry combat vehicles with their troop loads inside. This is the infantry combat vehicle, and with the rear, the door, the gate is at the rear, and this is where troops inside all set to go in. Depends on when they get their orders to move in completely. They're moving forward as per plan, very systematically, very slowly. The aim is to completely decimate the Hamas strongholds. Once they've been decimated from the skies and through artillery fire, then strengthen own territory. That's exactly what Israel has done in the past 1 week. They've ensured that there are no remnants of Hamas terrorists inside their own territory. The moment that was completely ensured, internal security, police, paramilitary forces, they've all been deployed, civil defense has been deployed, locals have been deployed, and these are those small infantry combat vehicles of the Israeli army, all set, locked and loaded to go in. The tanks have moved, now the infantry combat vehicles are moving. So anytime now, the moment those instructions are given, Israeli forces will move in. India today is right at the front lines of this battle in West Asia, getting you the latest reports. We were the first to show you how air attacks were intensifying, how artillery was pounding Hamas bases, how armor was moving forward, and now how these infantry combat vehicles, and behind them the special forces locked and loaded, ready to go and decimate the Hamas terror. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the army chief, they've both been very clear. This country is on the same page with one objective. That one objective is to completely decimate the Hamas and ensure that Gaza Strip can never be used to launch terror attacks on this part of Israel. The southernmost part of Israel remains most vulnerable. But despite all this movement, despite the air attacks and the artillery pounding, ground troops will have to go in, because even now Hamas retains the capacity to strike. Rocket attacks have been happening inside Israel. Even yesterday, till very late at night, we were near Sderot and rocket attacks were happening, though the Iron Dome was able to interdict and destroy most of the incoming rockets in the sky itself. But a couple of rockets did fall, one close to a hospital, one on the road, harmlessly, but at the same time, the threat of rocket attacks still remains. We've been speaking for the past half an hour, and even before we got here, the armor movement was happening. Mechanized infantry columns have been moving, the special forces have been moving, the ground forces have been moving, and all in full public flow. This just shows how massive is Israel's response going to be. One of the officers we spoke to told us that this is the fastest ever mobilization in the history of Israel, with 300,000 soldiers, with 3 lakh soldiers being mobilized in a couple of days, battle ready, locked and loaded and ready to go. That's exactly what Israel intends to do. This is day 7 of the deadly terror attack launched by Hamas, in which 1,200 people were massacred, more than 1,200, and more than 3,000 injured. Israel is still counting its losses, but resolute in its will and decision to decimate Hamas and ensure that the Gaza Strip no longer poses a threat. Hamas no longer poses a threat to people living in this part of Israel. Gaurav Sawant in southern Israel for India Today.
That's Gaurav Sawant, who's bringing us those live reports from the area Sderot. In fact, this is precisely the area that was bombarded by the Hamas forces, killed an entire police force and burnt down a police station, attacked civilians as well in that very area, where Israeli forces are now combing through and taking civilians to safety.